Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you a super cool puzzle where it is checkmate in 2 for the white pieces here in this very peculiar setup. So take a second and look at this position. You have 8 knights, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And they form this nice little octagon if you want to think of it that way. And your job is to figure out how to checkmate the black king in 2 moves. If you'd like to try to pause this video, feel free to do it. It is not so easy, and we'll go through move by move to make sure you understand why, but give it a shot. It's really fun. While you're thinking about this, let me quickly encourage you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity, so even a like, a subscribe, all that stuff helps me out so much, and it helps the world a little bit. So thank you for that for those of you who have. Okay, let's start talking about the solution here. So I mentioned this little octagon, right? I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of sides. So how do I make this work? Well, one thing to look at right away is that this king on d4 is attacking the knight on c5 and the knight on c3. Okay, so I have to probably move one of these knights, you might think. And that's not so right, and let's show why. So let's just say, for example, I decide to move, I don't know, the c5 knight. I move here to the middle because that protects this knight. Well, it's supposed to be mate in 2, and this is not going to be mate in 2 at all because not take here. Instead, the bishop can take the knight on d6. That's with check, by the way, and this next move that you make is not mate. So this fails the mate in 2 challenge here. And because of the symmetry that exists here, the same idea applies to the c3 knight. If I play knight c3 to e4, that does not do me any good because this is now a check. Bishop takes d2 check. So right off the bat, you can kind of establish that these c knights are not going to give me the winning move in 2. Okay, what about the d2 and the d6 knight? What about these knights? Well, if I move the d6 knight to the middle, because you want to protect these knights, that's the idea. Anywhere else, one of them will fall. This looks like a great idea, but unfortunately it doesn't work because black has the resource knight takes d2. And what is this move doing? Well, it frees up this square c4 for the king to run to if they were to get checked. So if knight f3, for example, the king can now run this way. Right? Of course, this could be taken, but I'm just trying to show the point of the king moving. So just to make sure it's clear, if this knight, after I made knight e4, if this knight does not take here, the whole point is that you're blocking off their squares. Right? Just look at the piece coverage. These knights are covering here. These knights are also covering those squares. Sorry, these knights are covering each other. And this king, of course, is cutting off all these. So this knight, these knights are coordinated. These two, all these knights really, are just covering all the squares around the king. That's my point. So if you make a nothing move, this is mate. So by moving knight takes d2, what you're doing is you're freeing up a square for your king in the event of a check. That check will just slide out of the way. Okay. So again, because of the symmetry of this position, d2 is kind of the same situation. If I play knight from d2 to e4, now instead of me worrying about the d2 knight, I worry about the d6 knight. So knight takes d6, and the idea is this king is going to run away if there is a check like that. Right? That's the point. Okay, so we established already, just a couple minutes in, we've established the c-file knights don't work because they pretty much will just generate a check. The bishop will generate a check. That's not going to be mate in 2. We established the d-file knights will not work because the knight will capture the one that didn't move, and that will create an escape square for the king. Okay, we're getting somewhere. So 4 knights down. Let's see if we can get the other 4 knights, see if one of them is the way to go. And which one? So let's go f6. let's see if it's different. I play knight f6, right? The goal here is to cut off all of black's attacking resources, perhaps. So now there's no check. There's nothing here. There's none of this. It might look like there's nothing. Well, also what I'm doing is I'm cutting off this king. So just look at the squares around the king. This square is covered by this knight. This square is covered by this knight. The knight itself, that square is covered by both of these knights. So if the knight were to move, the other knight has that backup square, right? So hopefully you're seeing that point. And now, of course, the king is covering all these. So I'm just threatening to give a check here. If I can give a check, I am good. Well, here's the problem with this f6 knight. This allows bishop takes c3. And now you might say, wait a second, what exactly is that doing? Well, this b4 to c3 move just took away my control over d5. So if I give a check, now they have one square and they have to walk away. And this is not mate in 2. So really, this idea of this f6 knight, it ends up giving away control of d5, which is why after black knocks out the other defender of d5, they now have that square to run to. And the same type of symmetry applies to f2. I play this move. What's the other way around? Well, instead of taking the c3 knight, I take the c5 knight. Again, the idea being that if I were to generate a check, I just lost control over the one square that they have as an out square. Okay, so we've established 3 complete files of knights that do not work in this puzzle. What about the remaining knights? Okay, let's look at it. We have 2 more knights. Knight g5 to e4. What is this doing? Well, it looks really good, but there's one problem. There's this pawn here. Know what that means? It can move. Check. This is not going to be mate in 2. You're going to have to take it, or you're going to have to take it, or you're going to have to move. And if you move the king, that's obviously not checkmate. So it will be mate in like 7 or 4 or 6, depending on what they do, but it's not mate in 1 from this position, or from this position rather. So it's not going to be mate in 2. That leaves us with one knight, the final knight, the knight on g3. Okay, what is the move then? So it's knight e4. Now, why do all the other defenses fail? Well, let's just look at them. If the bishop were to capture one of these knights, whether it be c5 or c3, it doesn't really matter. Knight c5, I keep saying knight, bishop c5, that's totally fine. I have all sorts of checks. Knight f3 is checkmate, knight b3 is checkmate. There are all sorts of mates, right? So it's not actually doing anything. Instead, this bishop capture is actually kind of just preventing them from having an out square. Okay, so, and that applies to both bishop moves. What about the knight moves? Well, let's look at it. After knight g3 to e4, let's say a knight takes, again, that's not really a problem because these squares are all held together, right? And this knight, importantly, is watching over c4, which means I have all sorts of mates here. That's a good one. You can pick more if you want. There are all sorts of mates. At least 5 mate in 1s I can see right here, right? A lot of mates. Pretty much if you could check the king, you can mate the king. Okay. And the same thing goes the other way around. This, because of the symmetry of this position, just allows another knight to give the mate. And the final defense that black had was this pawn. But because I'm moving g3, that pawn remains immobile. It can't do anything. So the only way to win this position in 2 moves, can you believe it, is knight g4, knight on g3 to e4, and then no matter what they do, there's going to be mate next. Pick your favorite way to do it. Any king move? Of course not. Here, doesn't matter. Mate. And like I mentioned, there's another mate right there. But yeah, that's it for the video. I saw this puzzle on Discord, and it's just an amazing puzzle. Thank you to the user who showed that puzzle. You're just amazing for creating it. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to do all that great stuff. It helps out so much. But that's it for now. Thank you so much. Bye.